Welcome to Lectora Live, and thank you so much for joining. My name is Christy Callahan, and I'm the Senior Director of Marketing here at eLearning Brothers. And thanks for being here for our first of what will be many Lectora jam sessions. Today, you'll get a chance to interact with some of the awesome members of the eLearning Brothers Lectora product team who work behind the scenes on this awesome application. Each session will have a different focus when we do these monthly Lectora jams, but today it's all about everything xAPI. We'll keep you posted on the topic, of course, the agenda, but also we'll cover some product updates towards the end, such as template releases, and of course, you can bring all of your burning questions directly to the product team. How nice is that? So today's superstar lineup. It's Chris Willis, Director of Product on Lectora, of course, Joe Wheelock, VP of Product Development, and Bill Milstead, Senior Developer and Designer and Mastermind of what you can do in Lectora with xAPI. But first, some very brief housekeeping notes. You probably know this. This session will be recorded and we'll email you a copy of the recording. So as long as you registered, you'll get a link. And if you have questions during the webinar, just use a question panel. We'll get to as many of them as we can. And if we can't, we'll try and continue the conversation. And probably the best place for that will be in the community. So if you haven't checked out our awesome community yet, just go to rockstars.elearningbrothers.com. We'll throw that URL in the chat. So since we have a limited amount of time, and I started a few minutes late, my apologies, I'm going to pass the torch over to Miss Chris Willis.
Hey there. So today in our session, we're going to talk xAPI. We've got Bill Milstead here. Some of you already know Bill. He is here at eLearning Brothers, Mr. xAPI, but especially xAPI in Lectora. That's one of many hats that Bill wears here at ELB. We're really lucky that he could carve out some time to be with us today. And then also, Joe, thank you, because he is Mr. Lectora and has been Mr. Lectora for many, many years. So again, thank you, Joe, for joining us today. Today, it's all about xAPI, but most specifically, what can you do with Lectora and xAPI? What can you accomplish with that? And without me blathering anymore, I've got a couple to help Bill know how to better talk to you and know where you're coming from and what you want from this session. Can you just do a quick poll here and tell us what is your role in designing e-learning? You can just go ahead and click right on the screen there, make your selection. If you're more than one, pick the one that suits you the most or describes you the best, or go ahead and use that questions panel and let us know there what your role is in designing e-learning. Are you an instructional designer or trainer? Are you an e-learning developer? Learning manager, a business consultant, or other? Please let us know.
Does everyone see the poll in there? Oh, okay. Looks like we've got.
I see them coming in. I see them, Christy.
Perfect. Okay. All right. I'm going to close the poll. All right. What do we got? Let me share the results. Aha.
Okay, a lot of instructional designers and trainers on the call, a lot of e-learning developers, as we would expect at an eLearning Brothers webinar, right? And also as we would expect based on the topic and coming here for Lectora Live. But we do have a few folks on the business side, and that's great because xAPI is great for business. Now let's talk about, let's go ahead and flip to the next one here. And what is your experience with xAPI? xAP what? Or are you just here because you're xAPI curious? That's okay, we don't judge. Are you an xAPI dabbler, or are you trying to win Bill's xAPI Pro hat from him?
All right, I'll give you guys a few more seconds to respond here. Okay, this is interesting. So no one is competing with Bill. So Bill is the xAPI Pro. That's what I can see here. And then we've got a nice mix for everybody else.
Super,
Okay.
super. Yeah, we've got about a quarter of you are new, and the majority are here because you're curious and want to learn more. And a few of you have dabbled. Bill, this is a great crowd for you. They're going to love what you have in store for them. So go ahead and hit it.
Oh, okay, yeah, no, sorry. We kind of framed this presentation around a couple questions that we get pretty commonly here. So I'm going to kind of just walk through and try to answer those as we see them here, and we've kind of ordered them in I guess frequency of how often we see them. So the first one is, what is xAPI? That's a big one. There's probably a lot of folks on the call that have this question. xAPI, just at its simplest, right? The easiest way to think about it, it's just a specification for collecting data about learning experiences. That's it, right? It basically is just a way to make simple statements about what a learner has done and then store that data, right? You can use that data, the xAPI statements, to track learner behavior inside of a traditional e-learning course in a really, really granular, kind of customizable manner. But you can also collect data about learning that takes place in other environments. And that last little bit is really the kind of big, sales pitch, big ticket item. The real important bit about xAPI is that you can use it to track learning that takes place outside of what we typically think of as a learning environment or a learning tool. All right, so the next question we see, right, pretty commonly is, what are the differences then between scorm and xAPI? Because if we're just talking about tracking learning data, right, tracking what a learner did in a course, you can do a whole lot of that in scorm. So a lot of folks are kind of confused by the differences there. So what are those differences? Well, there is a lot of overlap, actually, just in terms of the idea of it, right? We just talked about it. They're both specs to track learning behavior. Right? Both use JavaScript, both store learner data at some form of an endpoint. In the case of scorm, that's an LMS, as we all know. In the case of xAPI, that endpoint is an LRS, which is a learning records store. It's kind of similar in some ways in that it does store learner data. And in the case of xAPI, the data is a little bit different than an LMS, but it's similar conceptually, right? It's just that in xAPI, it's more plain language, simple statements that get sent out. You can see I've got this kind of table up on the screen here from xAPI.com that kind of shows some of the similarities and differences. You'll notice that xAPI has a lot more checkboxes, right? So there's a lot more differences. That's because really, the stuff that we just talked about, where it's like it's a spec that tracks learner data and it stores it somewhere. That's kind of about where the similarities stop, right? So you can track more in xAPI, full stop, right? Like that's one big thing. You can track multiple scores easily, detailed test results, just all kinds of stuff you can get in and track that you may not necessarily have visibility to when you're talking about an LMS reporting. But xAPI, like I just mentioned when we're talking about what is xAPI, it's also more extensible, right? So the structure for the data records, the learning records that xAPI uses is really simple, and the vocabulary is really simple. And because of how simple that is, it can be used in multiple environments to collect and to communicate back out that learner data, okay? So that opens up the possibility of creating more varied learning experiences and more applicable learning experiences, right? Because you can have multiple sources of learning now, and that data can become comparative. So learning experience took place over here, took place over here, took place over here. How does that individual's experience across or performance across those three experiences track? And then how does that correlate with actual real world performance data that you can also pipe into an LRS? Okay.
So Bill,
so yeah.
So the X in API, does that stand for experience?
It does, yeah. I guess I probably should have front loaded with all that, huh? xAPI it stands for that. So it's the Experience API. Used to hear it called tin can back in the day, but really using it as xAPI or xAPI makes a lot more sense, just because it keeps that experience idea at the top of mind, right? That's a critical difference between what xAPI is trying to do and what scorm does, right? We're not just talking about e-learning modules, we're talking about experiences that can take place in multiple different places in multiple different ways. Right?
So Joe can probably tell us a little bit, what is an API? What does the API part stand for?
It's just really a protocol, a common protocol that's used to store data or to receive data or to transfer data.
So when you're putting those two things together, basically we're talking about a way to track and store data about learning experiences.
That's right.
Cool. Okay. Well, I'm an ID and I learned something new today. So there we go. I've been using this term and I've never broken it down like that. So that, okay.
That's good. That's what today's for, right? And you mentioned in being an ID, right? Like that's kind of where we were going to head next is you know, what does that actually mean to IDs? So aside from just the general definition kind of bit of what it means to IDs, I've been talking pretty lofty here, right? Like, oh, you can collect all these different types of data and you can put them into different systems and you can take data from other places other than an e-learning course. But what is, right? Okay, what does that actually really mean in real world terms, right? So we're going to talk about that in three cases real quickly here. So, and I'm going to shift a little bit over to my other monitor, so you might have to look at the side of my head. But so the first way we're going to look at it is in terms of learner interaction. Okay, so you know, what I've got on screen right here is actually that is learning data, and I'm going to show it to you both in terms of the course and live on the LRS here in a second, that came out of one single interaction. It's a long scrolling page, one page in Lectora, with multiple content blocks and multiple click to reveals and a video and a knowledge check in it, right? Now, what you're seeing is an overview of the most frequently accessed content in that single page. So which block, which interaction block, which content block, you know, was it the knowledge check? What was hit most frequently by users? And then in the bottom left, I've got a you know, pie chart there that details the content in just the click to reveals. Next to that, I've got the average time on page, and then I've got the actors with the most events. This is a really very fast dashboard that I just threw together to show that you can get all kinds of really granular data out of a single interaction in xAPI, right? Now, we can get really basic information out of scorm about whether or not a user hit a page and exited a page, right? But what we can't see is necessarily what they did on that page. You know, which individual object they clicked, which content block they read or reread or skipped. Then you can, because you can't get that data, you can't map how that content actually and their consumption of it actually correlates to the performance on knowledge checks within that individual course. But because you can get in at a real granular level by putting xAPI statements on individual objects inside of a single page, single interaction, you can start to draw a lot of that data out. Again, I'll show you this course kind of as we go in some more examples here in the future once we start actually looking into how to use Lectora for statements. But real simply, this is just basically a one interaction page that we're getting all kinds of info out of. Blowing that out a little bit more, right, make it a little more kind of big picture stuff. So like, okay, so I can track whether or not a user clicked tab 1, tab 3, and tab 4 in an interaction. All right, that's pretty cool, I guess, but what can I really do with that? Well, you can use that information if you construct a you know, kind of a data program properly, like a learner analytics approach properly. You can use the data that you get out of the interactions that you might have tagged with xAPI in an e-learning course to make some decisions about things. So I'll give you another example here real briefly. When we redesigned and redid the UI for Lectora 21, we realized very quickly that we had kind of an issue with data, or not. No, I'm sorry. With data, with knowing whether or not it was going to work, with knowing whether or not our learners would approve of the UI that we had chosen. So we took xAPI to the solution to come up with a solution for the problem. We actually built a simulation of Lectora inside of Lectora, tacked on some xAPI-enabled survey questions, just using out-of-the-box stuff from Lectora, right? And then sent it out to a user cohort. And we were able to get a whole bunch of data back from our users in the course of this test. We had them go through and, click some things, find this button, find this shape, do these tasks. And then we captured what they clicked, what they missed, what they skipped, how long they were on page. And then we put together some dashboards on that, and we're able to see some really clear patterns about what was going on inside of our course here, right? Like we had a really clear favorite style that came out of our surveys. Same thing with the hardest versus easiest to use. We had some really good qualitative data, just raw feedback we were able to kind of compile and categorize for quick access and review. We also were able to track some time to see some real clear patterns of what was going on in this course. And because of that, we were able to make an adjustment to what we were doing with our design, change some things, and then ultimately end on a final design that was far better because we had this user feedback. So, across a broader course and not just a single interaction, right? That's where this analogy goes. You can really see patterns of behavior. You can really see patterns of usage and content. You can really see very quickly, like, okay, this big red thing on my dashboard, they're always missing this question. What do I need to do as an instructional designer or an e-learning developer to go back and improve the content, improve the course, etc. Right? So the last one that's kind of going back up toward that lofty stuff with xAPI is, what does that mean for you as an ID? Is that, well, as xAPI really develops as a spec, and as you as an instructional designer and somebody who works with xAPI develop as a developer, as a designer, you can start to think in ways that go way outside of traditional e-learning, specifically e-learning as we think of it as in the moment, and you can begin to really truly start to correlate real world performance data with your training, and that has some budgetary benefits. There's a lot of stuff that goes along with being able to actually prove, hey, this person is really they're succeeding in their job role, and that we can see a direct correlation with their improvement on training over time, things like that. So the reason that that's possible is because of two things. An LRS can accept data from any tool because the xAPI statement structure and the way it's built is so simple. So not just an LMS, not just an e-learning course, right? Anything that can send a statement in the right format to that endpoint, it can take that statement, and then it can create reports on aggregate data, like I was saying toward at the beginning of this, right? And it can even trigger events, an LRS could, based on that external data. So if we think about this real simply, imagine that you have like on-the-job data, performance data that comes out of an HRIS system. That could get sent to an LRS to trigger course completions, to trigger course releases. It could be sent in just as a single data point to then be compared in a dashboard with a training path, right? There's a lot of flexibility in the approach to xAPI that in the future will mean an awful lot to instructional designers.
Bill, you have a question here.
Yeah, let's go.
Somebody's asking, how do you actually implement the dashboard? We have a specific LMS platform we have to use, but they require our courses to be in SCORM. Would it be possible for me to track xAPI separately?
It's an interesting question, and so actually, you know what? Let's lob this to Joe real quickly and see if he's got any good input, and before I go off on a big tangent. So.
As everything is. Unfortunately, when you publish to SCORM, it does disable the automatic built-in coupling to xAPI, but you still can do the initialization and send xAPI statements. It's just, it would require a little bit of scripting. I think there are some examples of that in the community.
Yeah, there are, and we're actually just finishing up the Scrolly course. We're finishing that up as a showcase template. So a little bit different than what we've had in the past. It's less of a template, more of a showcase course, so you can break it apart and kind of see how things are done.
Well, some LMS will let you publish to xAPI, and then they'll set the SCORM completion as well. Like RLP will do that.
That's right.
That's good to
right.
know. Could you
We'll have a custom example. I'm sorry. I was just gonna say we will have a custom statement example in that showcase course that's coming out next. So I'm sorry, go ahead. I apologize.
No, I was just gonna ask because I'm always brainstorming and learning as we go. Would it be possible to link out to something that's xAPI enabled, like through a web window, and then run that experience separately and then come back into a SCORM course? I don't know.
Yeah, I mean,
maybe you wouldn't.
The more direct approach would be kind of what Joe was saying, and that's just to initialize xAPI on your own and kind of send custom statements if you have to submit it to SCORM.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. Okay. Any other questions, or do we want
to? Somebody wants to know what LRS we use.
Yeah, we've got a couple. We use a few. I mean, we've got an LRS with RLP, but we also reach out and test on other LRSs just to see how things display, especially because our templates all have baked in Lectora xAPI statements in them. So we want to check to make sure that everything's coming through properly and displaying the way we would want it to. So.
Yep, and RLP being our Rockstar Learning platform, which is our own eLearning Brothers learning experience platform.
What did you do the dashboards in, Bill?
Yeah, I did those dashboards in Veracity. That's actually the one that I had up. The one I had up earlier was Veracity. They're they have a free option that's actually pretty great for testing. It's got some decent capacity on it, so you might want to check that one out. I love their analytics that they provide. It's just at a single click. I'll show that to you in a bit. Actually, may as well.
Here's a fun one. Before we move on, could you talk about the role of CMI5 as the gateway drug from SCORM to xAPI?
Oh boy, I think we probably need to do. I'm gonna dodge that one actually. I think we probably need to do kind of a broader CMI5 discussion or maybe series of blog posts or something in the future, because there's some stuff to be talked about. So.
Okay, so hold that thought and keep following Lectora Live, and we gotcha.
There we go.
All right, cool, Bill, back to you.
Oh, okay, all right. So the next question that we get, because we've been talking about this whole statement thing throughout, right? The statement is the key to do everything that we've been saying. So what is it? What is an xAPI statement? And then secondarily, what's the syntax of it? Okay, so an xAPI statement, there's really kind of a two-part answer to it. Okay, so at the one level, at the kind of top level display level, the simplest level, xAPI statement is basically just a kind of a sentence really that gets submitted to the LRS about what a learner did, right? But it takes a specific form in terms, you see it on the screen, actor, verb, object, right? So Joe watched video 2, Chris clicked tab 1. Learner did a thing. That's who did what. That's the basic structure, and that's what you see when you're just looking at a statement viewer of an LRS. You see a series of statements. It's just Joe clicked this, Joe clicked that, Joe did the other thing. It's really easy to process visually because it's all in plain text. It's real simple to see, but it's not super duper useful, really, just that little bit of information. But what is really useful is the kind of second part, what's going on behind the scenes of that statement. And you'll see, on my screen here, I've got all the way up at the top, B. Milstead reviewed thin/transplant seedlings. Okay, so all that's saying, that's the first part of what I was just talking about. The actor, Bill Milstead, or B. Milstead at eLearning Brothers. What did I do? My verb, I reviewed. Object was this thing here, and this thing was it's a page. It's a chunk of content inside of a 4-tab click to reveal interaction, or 5 tabs, something like that. Okay. What's inside of that, when I twirl it down, you see that kind of little twirl down on the top left there, is all this other stuff that actually makes up the structure of the statement. okay? And you can see real clearly there's some detail about verb in there, there's timestamp, there's these object definitions, and there's ID, you know, there's some context stuff, some actor stuff, all this other stuff in there. Well, all of that other stuff, it captures, I mean, just an immense amount of information. And that's all carried along with that really seemingly simple actor verb object statement, okay? Some examples of what's actually included in there. You'll see context is shown in there. There's both a parent and a grouping. That tells you kind of where the action took place, you know, in terms of a course or just in general, right? Like what the immediate place the action took place on was, and then kind of what that's more broadly related to. So it would be in this case, right? The interaction took place on a single page, that's the parent, and then inside the bigger course, that's the grouping. But it can also include score, success status, time. You can include attachments inside of an xAPI statement. There's also kind of a catch-all group called extensions that exist inside of an xAPI statement. And you can really basically just grab pretty much anything you want in a statement. Now, what's most cool about that, okay, and this is kind of the thing that ties all of this stuff together, is that because of the way the statement is structured and the way that it uses these tags, if you look up, you'll notice this object ID tag in here, right? What you're really doing is making reference to unique objects inside of a learning experience. So even though my top level statement, Bill reviewed thin transplant seedlings, my object is only listed as thin/transplant seedlings. It's actually got a unique identifier inside the body of the statement, okay? And that it's really supposed to be a unique identifier, the way that xAPI works, okay? So that particular page, that particular chunk of content in this one course, that is unique to that one little place, right? But because that works that way, and I know that little detail, I can use a lot with it, okay? So because I know unique IDs of objects in the LRS, I can then think back to kind of when we were talking about targeting things from outside an LRS or outside of a course. You can use those object IDs inside of statements coming from external sources to then affect those objects you're talking about, right? So for instance, this is a real simple example. A course, right? You could mark a course complete from a user from outside that course based on performance elsewhere, all right? So simplest example, imagine you've got like an advanced level Lectora course. At the end of the course, when the learner passes, you include a few custom statements, and those trigger in the background your course to reach out to the LRS and mark both the beginner and the intermediate courses complete in that LRS, you know, as part of that series. Now, scorm can do that. You can do that on an LMS with equivalencies, but you can kind of see the idea I'm working with, right? So imagine, since we also said that this could come from other sources, imagine that those completion marks aren't coming from a Lectora course. So instead, you're sending statements that target Lectora courses, but you're doing it from, let's say, a little applet in a browser window. So somebody reads a page and they hit that applet on their browser, right? A little bookmarklet kind of a thing, whatever we call those. And then that sends an xAPI statement. Or it's from a social system or something, right? Or imagine that your course is adaptive and it can read completion status of other courses and then only display content inside that course based on the status of certain objects it's queried on the LRS, right? You could even do that down to the individual button level inside of a Lectora course if you so choose. So you can use just the knowledge that individual objects have unique IDs to design your course, design your object structure, and then query that later on to do other things in courses and make some really interesting stuff happen. That's probably a little we're just going at it talking here. So the next question then is, okay, well, how do we actually do that in Lectora? Okay, and it's real simple. So I'm gonna actually hop into the tool here. Turns out that I always Something about the GoToMeeting thing throws me off every time. Okay, so the thing about what we've done in Lectora is that we've taken care of creating what in other tools are custom statements. We've taken care of that for you inside the tool in Lectora. So you can just generate statements about every object inside of a course using built-in actions, right? Without ever, if you chose, never having to do any custom anything, right? So I'll show you. I'm going to show you how you do it, and then I'm going to show you that long scrolling course I was talking about, and then I'm going to show you the data that came out of it real quick. So for instance, if I wanted to track that somebody had pressed this button that I've got highlighted here, here are some tips to get you started. All I need to do is go up and click action. And then on the drop down under, no action, I just click send statement. And then I'm given two little fields over to the right-hand side. Let me scroll up. You can see that. I don't know what I'm doing. Sorry, I'm two views here. But so you can see that I get these two new fields. You get a drop-down field for verb, and we pre-populate that with a bunch of kind of default verbs, right? So experienced, preferred, failed, all that kind of stuff that's built in. But you can also just key in a verb if you want, something that's custom, and we'll carry that over. Then you get an object field, right? So think back to the structure of the statement. Actor, well, that's going to come over with your course. Verb, you just set that. Object, right? The third part of the statement there. You can do that in one of two ways. You can either leave it totally blank, and if you do, Lectora is going to pick up whatever name you provided in the Project Explorer. See, I've got it highlighted on the left-hand side over there. Or if you want, you can just key in something unique there. Okay. Then when you publish to xAPI, which is just it's an option in the dropdown, right? You just go over to home, hit publish, select xAPI. Then when you do that, we take care of everything, right? We're going to create the full object ID for that individual button. We're going to map it up to the particular page it lives on for the parent. We're going to map it up to the course that it lives in for the grouping. We're going to send the statement. We're going to put the wrapper on it. All the other, it's all taken care of. You can as well, if you so choose, create a custom statement. So the very bottom of this really long interaction that I've got here, I've got a summary. It's just a content block, but I want to mark when a user has seen it so that I know they completed the course. All I did there is I actually set up a custom action to run JavaScript. And in that custom JavaScript action, I've just got some stuff that I'm doing. I'm playing with some time formatting. And then I go down and I send a custom xAPI statement. When I publish to xAPI, it's going to pick up that record, do what it needs to do, and send the statement the way I've formatted it. So you have two ways to make it work in Lectora, very simply. Show you that scroller, show you what it looks like, right? So this data that I was showing previously, and we were kind of talking about the thing that I just showed for, how I put up my courses. That's this course right here. Like I was saying, it's just a single long scrolling page, but in that single page, we've got a bunch of interactions, right? Got some content, got another interaction or so here. And, in general, really what I should expect to see out of that is one experience statement, and then that's about it, right? All I should really see out of another tool would be what I did, or rather what I saw, just the page itself when I hit that page. But because of the way that we've got this thing built out, using those statements that I just showed you in Lectora, instead, right, you can see everything that happened 47 or so seconds ago. You can see a whole lot more. So you can see not only that I experienced that individual page, which is the standard off the, out of the box statement, but you can also see that I exposed a whole bunch of content, which means that I at least moved down the page, right? You can see that I reviewed a couple of my interaction content blocks, right? And because I can see all that kind of information, I can generate some real rapid dashboards like I was showing you in that screenshot before. So I'm just going to pull this up. And you can see real fast, right? A whole bunch of stuff that just comes out of that course on a single page that I otherwise wouldn't have been able to see.
So we have a question here.
Yeah.
Can we use xAPI without adding JavaScript?
Yeah, I mean, you can definitely use xAPI just using the actions that are built in. So, you know, like I was showing up at the top here, I'll scroll up again and hit this xAPI statement. That's just a built-in action. I think you can see it up top here, right? So that's just a send statement action. All that JavaScript stuff that occurs on the back end, all the actual statement formatting, that's taken care of. You don't ever have to see it. So all you got to do is pick your verb, pick your object if you even want to pick an object, and you're good to go.
So like many things in Lectora, you can do it the way it's built in Lectora, but if you have some custom case or something extra that you need to do, Lectora gives you visibility to everything, and the ability to put your own coding in, so you can take it to that next level if that's the kind of work you do and that's the kind of thing you enjoy doing. But you don't have to know that to use Lectora out of the box.
That's exactly right. And in fact, I mean, I would say that, so at this point I've tinkered with a bunch of rapid authoring tools, and it's the easiest to use out of the box for these types of statements. In fact, it's the only of the big tools that get used for rapid authoring. It's the only one that provides custom object level statements without any coding, or without any post-publish surgery or any of that kind of fun stuff. All right. So do we have any more questions, or you want to move on to kind of the behavioral stuff about this, Chris? What do you think?
I think we're ready to move on. So
Okay.
Is this my slide? Is this where you wanted me to jump in? Is this
the
ID perspective about what does this mean to us as IDs? So, okay. So if that's the case, then by all means, I'm going to jump in, because this is what I think is really cool. We've been talking about xAPI in the ID world for a very, very, very long time. And I think it's been kind of like, for many of us, it's been kind of this black box of again, I didn't even equate it to the experience API. And honestly, before I came here and started working closely with Joe and the engineers here at ELB, I didn't have a lot of reason to understand xAPI except from the standpoint of, hey, it's this cool thing that can help us measure things outside of the course. As we're working together, and I'm working with Bill, I'm working with Joe, and we're looking at it deeper, the promise of xAPI starts getting really exciting to me, because from a performance standpoint, the other thing that IDs have been talking about forever is, how do we move from learning and tracking butts and seats to getting to where we're tracking what people actually do and affecting behavior? And one of the things that I talked about with Bill and Joe a little bit, and also some of the other IDs on our team and folks we work with, is, well, and especially our marketing team, because I talk with them, because who measures behavior better than marketing? Marketing knows when you hit a shopping cart, marketing knows where you came from before you hit the site, what you looked at on the site, how long you spent on the site, what you put in your cart, what you took out of your cart, you know, whether you completed that transaction in your cart, and then ultimately what you purchased. In many cases, they know where you immediately went next. Then they lose track of you at that point, but they know your entire experience from the moment that they sent you something that said, hey, you know, you really want this thing, to hitting the site and going through the entire transaction and then leaving. They know. And what do they do with that? They look at that data and they determine what works and what doesn't work. So isn't that the holy grail of learning, that we know what somebody's doing before they come to our course, what they take in our course, and then what a difference does it make in our organization afterwards? Now, this gets us into the level of performance. If you think about like a call center situation, you know, when somebody's working in a call center and they take a call and then they're hitting your their performance tool, it's giving them the scripts and telling them what to follow and what to do in order to help resolve that case. That's not happening in an e-learning course. That's a different kind of performance system. And by using xAPI, you can then follow in that use case where that person went to, what kind of call they said it was, where they looked for the information to resolve the call, how long it took them to resolve the call. And you can feed them remedial information to help support them and improve their performance on the job the next time they get a call like that. That's just one example. There are many, many examples that even go out to things happening on a shop floor, things happening out in the field, all kinds of different situations where you can provide just in time in the workflow performance support using xAPI. What's really cool about that is, as easy as it is to write these kinds of remediation and supports in Lectora, it makes Lectora such an excellent performance support tool, not just a formal learning tool. So if you are getting into learning in the workflow and starting to explore Bob Mosher's 5 moments of need and moving from learning to performance, then you really need to be looking at Lectora and thinking about learning outside of the course and what you can do using Lectora and xAPI. So that's my little rant and spiel on the subject. I don't know if Bill or Joe, if you have anything to add to that, or any other questions. I don't see any other questions. Please do use the questions panel if you have any other questions for the team here. And as we move into the What's New section, as promised, if you have any questions specific to Lectora outside of xAPI, feel free to feed those to us. We will answer them as time allows. If we can't answer them here, we'll try to answer them in community in the follow-up email, or we'll take them like the CMI 5 question as a request for a future Lectora Live. So it's all good. Just fill it up, send it to us. We want it all. So with that, that said, let's look at what's new. We had a new release of ReviewLink. Joe, I should have invited Jim on the call. He's the he is our engineer who is responsible for ReviewLink. ReviewLink is amazing. I don't know, do you have anything you'd like to say on behalf of Jim in regards to our refreshed ReviewLink?
Well, I mean, Bill was involved with
yes, he was. Bill did the design.
It looks great. It looks great. They did a terrific job refreshing the UI.
That got a nice little makeover there. Very impressive.
Yes, she did. She did. She had the glamour. What do you call it? The glam makeover there. So, but what's really cool too is for your reviewers who are coming to ReviewLink for the first time, we've also Bill completely updated and refreshed the tutorial there. So the first thing when somebody comes and you send them a link and say, hey, review my course in ReviewLink, they also get a link to the tutorial that shows them how to use ReviewLink. And it's very easy. You don't, your reviewers don't need to install anything. They don't need to own Lectora. So if you are a Lectora user and you're not using ReviewLink yet, you're missing out. You need to check that out. It's there for you. So there's an untapped resource. Lectora Online 5 just came out. What was that? Was that last? No, the weekend before last. The weekend before last. Our weekends run together when we do a launch because we have many long nights and weekends. And yes, Lectora Online 5 just came out. Please check out ModDev. We don't have any time to talk about ModDev. We'll be talking about that a little bit more and what you can do with ModDev in Lectora. We have new quick win tutorials there right on the dashboard for you. Check those out. Those will give you introduction to ModDev. We also have 2 new showcase titles. One of them is Mountain Panic, which is a completely accessible text-based adventure game. You can take that one. The code is there in our library and in our template library, and you can bring that up. Just change the text, all the scoring and everything's there for you, and you can turn that into your very own accessible text-based adventure game. So that one's there. And for those of you who have been around back with Lectora for quite some time, you'll recognize Chinese tea ceremony. That one has been completely made over starting with ModDev and then customized. So you can see in that one not only how to use Lectora and you also have that as a sample course that you can copy and paste parts out of it and use in your own course, but you can see how you can take the new themes and style packs and elements of ModDev that come in Lectora now and really customize those and make them your own, create your own templates, and then use those throughout your organization. Last one. Oh, go ahead, Christy.
Oh, I was just going to say we have a couple more questions, but I'm going to let you wrap up first because this is important with the asset library because I'm all sorts of excited about our 5 new friends. So
yes,
yes.
We have a veritable plethora of new standalone interactions. These are of the wireframe variety that go with ModDev, but also the fully styled interactions that mix and match with our course starters. Bill and his team have been loading up the template library with new interactions for you. Please follow the Rockstar our Rockstar community, because we are now announcing every other week, I believe it is, we're launching something new to template library or asset library, and please watch there, and we're putting up links so that those of you who are using Lectora can get to the new stuff and check it out right away. And then we have new style pack extensions coming out. So Bill's got lots of amazing ideas for those. Now, the new inclusive cutout characters, your learners want to see themselves in your learning. Think about how many times somebody takes one of the courses that you create and the messages that you're sending by the characters that you're using. We're committing here at eLearning Brothers to creating more diverse set of characters for you to use in your courses, and be watching for those. If you have ideas of characters you'd like to see, somebody who you feel is underrepresented in the learning you're creating, let us know. And we'll take your feedback. I can't promise you we can give you exactly what you're asking for, but I can promise you we do listen to your suggestions and they do guide our decisions. I think it's back to you, Christy, on the next slide. There we go.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And then we'll go through a few more questions. First, I'm pretty sure that everyone on the call today is a Lectora fan already using it, but if you're not, all you got to do is go to eLearningbrothers.com. Go to Create Learning, click on Lectora, check it out, free trial, gives you a review link and all kinds of goodies in there. So if you haven't done that yet, definitely check it out. We have trials for Lectora Online and Desktop 21. And we do have a couple more questions I thought maybe we could go through. And by the way, if there is a topic, as Chris said earlier, that you'd like to see before our monthly Lectora live jam sessions, definitely ping us in the community. You can ping me, C. Callahan at eLearningBrothers.com. C. Callahan has 1 L. I'm always looking for cool ideas. In fact, Christine suggested today that she would love it if we hosted a mini workshop on xAPI. So it sounds like there is some interest. So yay, yeah, I'm into that. Now, somebody also asked, you showed the dashboard view for instructors or course managers, but let me see if I can pull up this question. I can't see the question already, but do you? Oh, can you see the end of that question? I can't quite see that.
Yes. Do you have any view for learners so that you can show the value of xAPI to learners too? Absolutely. You can take the variables and the data that you collect from xAPI and you can create your own dashboards or reports or views. Think about it the same way as when a learner takes an assessment in your course and at the end you show them how they did on the assessment. You're doing the exact same thing. You're collecting some data from something that they're inputting, your learner's inputting, you're interpreting it in some way, and then you're figuring out how to visually present that to them. You can do the exact same thing with your xAPI data. Is that right, Bill?
Yeah, everything just comes down to data design. Like how, like you just have to start with, I mean, it's what we're supposed to be doing with instructional design, right? Like we have the goal, and we start there, and then we're going to build backwards. So you got to know what it is that you're trying to build, and then you got to kind of design how you're going to capture the data around that. So if you know you need a learner dashboard, you're going to build your course a certain way so you can get the data to feed that dashboard. But it's all the same type of data. So if you can build it for a instructional designer to view, you can build it such that it would be useful for a learner to view as well. Also, all those dashboards were the at a glance stuff. One of the things about Veracity that's nice, if anybody out there is looking for a LRS to test and see how this visualization stuff works. Lectora or Veracity actually has pretty great at a glance stuff, right? So I'm just going to hop back into the LRS here and show you what it does on the fly. So for instance, if I was going to just try to get a dashboard for the main page that drives this course, they do some of that automatically for you so that you can get some visualizations. Now, they're not all super useful because you got to know what you're looking for, and this is all just kind of generic stuff. But the rest of it that I was showing you here is all custom built using their dashboard builder. That helps you out as well. So I'm going into all this detail to let you know that yeah, capabilities there. You can grab and display anything you want. A lot of it's going to depend on your in system for whether or not you can just visualize the way you want and how you collect the data to begin with.
One more quick. Oh, go ahead, Joe.
Oh, I liked your example too earlier, Bill, about adaptive learning, where you can query if something has already happened or been completed, and then you can go down a different path in your course.
Oh, yeah.
I actually had a question for you, Joe. Somebody's asking, would you say that xAPI is LMS independent?
I see, that's Wendy. Hi, Wendy. Yes, I would say it's LMS independent. It's stored in a LRS, which is totally different, and you can actually launch an AP or xAPI course with a launcher. It does not require LMS, and we have an example of how to do that in our community as well, with some easy ways to be able to launch the content.
So that scrolly course example, if anybody caught it at the very beginning, I hit a launch button there, and there was a little email tag. That was the Lectora xAPI launcher that's out there on the community that I did a little minor customization to with the XML. But that's what was pushing out that course, and that course lived on an Amazon bucket. There was no LMS involved, none of that. That's just sending data from basically a website, completely independent of what we think of as e-learning architecture to the LRS.
Everybody who knows you guys, it's so great to see everyone say, hello, Joe, so great to see you online. Thank you all. And I was just going to say another awesome suggestion we have from our friend Christine O'Malley. Hi, Christine. Is that it would be awesome to have a view similar option in the asset library. That's a really cool suggestion.
We'll take that, Josh.
Yeah, wouldn't that be cool? I think that's a really cool suggestion, actually, But anyway, I just wanted to thank you all for joining our first Lectora Live Jam session. It's really cool having you guys. I love seeing clients on here. And like I said, if you'd like to be a client, become a client, because we're so happy to see you all joining and give it a test drive. Give it a second look in Lectora if you haven't lately. The latest releases have been absolutely amazing. And like I said, if there's a topic you want us to cover, not only will we likely cover it at some point, we might even rope you in. So if you want to actually present with us, come on down. We can get you some swag and all kinds of stuff. So thank you again. And have a wonderful rest of the day, and we'll be sending out the link. So if you want to revert back to all these great tips from Bill, Chris, and Joe, you'll be seeing it in your inbox. And until then, ciao, and thanks again. See you next time.
And see you
All
in
right,
community.
take care. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.